to The Book of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. At the Association of Jewish Libraries convention in Chicago this summer, podcaster Mark Blevis led a session on social media that opened the floodgates of people's curiosity. Convention attendees wanted to learn more about social media, what it is, what it means to participate, and how to get started. As a continuation of that conversation, the Book of Life is offering a series of podcast episodes called Why Be Social? This is Why Be Social, Part 3. I hope the earlier episodes in this series have gotten you interested in checking out some real-life blogs and podcasts. There are zillions of blog and podcast websites online, so where do you get started? Well, here with some suggestions of blogs and podcasts relating to Jewish literature is Alex Block, Online Sales and Marketing Manager for the Jewish Publication Society. You don't need to write these suggestions down. Just click on the links in the show notes at bookoflifepodcast.com. Also in the show notes, you'll find suggested lists of blogs that are read by and sometimes created by individual members of the Association of Jewish Libraries. Have fun checking them out. Alex, let's talk a little bit about blogs and podcasts that Jewish book lovers would find of use, would find interesting and relevant.
Right.
Now, each of us actually represents some kind of blogging and podcasting effort. So we can talk about ours, and then we can talk about some of the other ones out there online that we have found to be useful.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk first about the Jewish Publication Society blog that you work on?
Okay. The Jewish Publication Society, as you probably know, we're a publisher of Jewish books. You would think that we would only talk about our stuff, but the reality is we've really created a blog that is about the world of Jewish books at large. We talk about Jewish book events. We do mini reviews of books by other publishers. We have a whole author series, JPS authors and their top 10 books on a particular topic that they are really into. We do really plan on opening up to JPS authors to have their own blogs on it.
Mm-hmm. I really like on the JPS blog how you have these guest experts come in and recommend the 10 books on various themes. I think that 10-book suggestion is a unique thing I haven't seen elsewhere, and it's very handy.
Yeah, thank you. So I've actually been following your podcast for a while, The Book of Life, and I guess the thing that impresses me the most about it is that you seem to be everywhere in the Jewish book world. I mean, where did this come from, the drive to keep this going with so much content constantly?
Well, I've been doing it for a long time. The Book of Life, the first episode was December 2005.
Wow.
And I was already very involved in the Jewish literary world through the Sidney Teller Book Award Committee and the Association of Jewish Libraries. I had a lot of connections, so it's been not too hard for me to find good interviews.
But it's not just interviews. I mean, there's a lot more, especially with this drive for how to get Jewish book people involved in the online Jewish book world.
Well, this Why Be Social series is a new and different kind of thing for the Book of Life, and it really grew from an experience at the Association of Jewish Libraries convention this year where we had a session on social media led by Mark Blevis, and there were so many different levels within that room of the way people understood social media, the way people were involved with it, and there was just no way in that hour to address all the different kinds of questions people had. So I decided to take that further using the tools of social media and extend that conversation by doing this series, by including conversations with people on this topic to hopefully provide information that will help the people who felt a little bit left behind by the techno conversation that was going on there at the convention.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So let's talk about some other Jewish literary blogs or podcasts that are out there. And I'd like to begin by pointing out the resources of the Association of Jewish Libraries, since that's where this whole conversation kind of began.
Right.
The Association of Jewish Libraries has just recently begun blogging and podcasting. The blog is mainly AJL-related events and news. not as broad as what you're doing with JPS. The AJL podcast is convention recordings, so people who were at a convention but maybe didn't get to go to certain sessions, or people who were not able to come to the convention, can actually hear what they missed.
Right, and the thing that I noticed most about the podcast, there's a lot of stuff that's completely relevant both to libraries and librarians, even as individuals with their personal interests. When you visit the index, there's Jewish history, there's music, there's author talks, there's even stuff about the publishing industry. So it's almost like a database of that great stuff that you might have missed or wanted to recap from the convention.
Yeah, it's definitely not only for librarians. Anyone who's interested in Jewish literature will find things of interest to them. There are recordings of lectures, panel discussions, author talks, and so on.
Right.
Okay, tell me another favorite of yours.
Well, I actually really, really love the blog that's done by the Jewish Book Council. And the Jewish Book Council, as you guys probably know, is a small organization, but they do gigantic things in terms of providing authors for Jewish Book Month, which is November. Their blog is updated constantly. I mean, I feel like whenever there's something that happens in the Jewish book world at large, it shows up on the Jewish Book Council blog. They have tons of links to really great websites, different retailers and publishers and magazines.
I like how they have authors do guest blogging, too, so that it's not just one voice.
Yeah, that series in conjunction with My Jewish Learning, it's really great.
Well, for people who are interested in children's literature in particular, I'd like to recommend a blog by my friend Barbara Bates, who's also an AJL member, and she's on the Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee, and she's an author. And she has a blog simply called Jewish Books for Children, where she does a lot of interviews. So if you want to know more about the story behind the story for a lot of Jewish children's books, that is a great resource.
There's something I wanted to say about her blog, too, which is completely impressive, is that she has a listing on the side. Every single one of her postings she tags with a label, and the listing is alphabetical. So in terms of being an archive for content on any related topic, it's really great.
Let me just explain for people who aren't familiar. In the blogging world, using a tag or a label is like putting a subject heading on a library record. That, I guess, would be the analogy.
Yeah.
So if you look at that list of tags or labels, it's basically forming an index, like the index at the back of a book, and you can click on those to be taken to the pages where you'll find content related to that topic.
Right.
A lot of AJL members actually do blog. There's another blog by Steve Bergson, who's an AJL member from Toronto, and he blogs about Jewish comics. Have you seen that one?
I have, absolutely. I'm also completely into comics, and I've, he's been around for a long time. I think this blog has been up since 2005. Jews almost kind of created the comic book industry, and so a blog on Jewish comics, there's so much content out there, and Steve really dives into comic books, comic strips that have Jewish characters. He is also another one of those people that I feel like is everywhere. I mean, he goes to conventions and talks about these events, and it's really great.
He has some major coverage of Comic-Con. I also found it interesting when I was looking at his blog to see that he has a sort of comic blogging friend in the States that they refer back and forth to each other. At jweekly.com, the online newspaper from the San Francisco Bay Area, they have a weekly blog column called Comics Friday, which is about Jewish comics. And that blog talks about Steve, and Steve talks about that one. And so they're
right,
all friends.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Comics have become a great tool. It's really great to see him talking about this topic so extensively.
There's a group blog that I've seen on poetry called A Big Jewish Blog.
Right.
They have news on Jewish poets and announcements of poetry books that are being published. I think that's a good one for anybody who has either a personal or academic interest in Judaic poetry.
Absolutely. I mean, some of these contributors here are pretty impressive. Alicia Ostreicher and Norman Finkelstein. They really kind of hit the nail right on the head with this one. There's a lot out there, everything from classical stuff to My Jewish Learning is running a bad poetry contest. This is really a go-to place for it.
Okay. Hit me with another one.
There's this one site called the Jewish Literary Review. that's organized in a way that I think is absolutely great. They cover everything from the more mainstream Amazon bestsellers to author interviews, and they have book reviews and essays and poetry, and it's really the entire span of what's available in the book world that they kind of apply to the Jewish book world.
I like how that one is very reminiscent of a newspaper.
Yes.
It's got like a broad coverage, and it feels like you could sort of sit down with it for a while and virtually leaf through it, maybe with a cup of coffee. It really feels like reading the newspaper. With the Jewish Literary Review, I want to point out that as of our conversation now in August 2009, they haven't posted since April, and I was worried that maybe the blog was dead, but I emailed the blogger, and he promised that he's just been very busy lately, and he does intend to get back to it, so it is still ongoing.
Right.
That's an interesting thing about blogs, that your blog, the JPS blog, is an official blog that's supported by an organization. But many blogs are done out of the love and interest of individuals. So they're not always produced on a regular schedule. That's just the way blogs work, and as readers we need to know that and accept that.
Right. And another thing about blogs that I think is really important is that the best way to get the most information out of a blog is to literally subscribe to the blog so that you get email updates, or you can use a thing called a feed reader. Content that you'll get comes, at random when people can update their blogs.
Right. And just to make sure people technically understand what that means, there are different ways you can look at a blog. You can simply go online and type in the address and go to that blog and read it, or you can subscribe. And this is analogous to a magazine. You could go to the newsstand and buy a single issue and read that one, or you can subscribe to a magazine and have it delivered to your mailbox.
Right.
So the same thing with a blog. You can just go online and look at it when you feel like it, or you can subscribe, which means that new posts will be delivered to either your mailbox or your feed reader or whatever technical method you've used to sign up for that subscription.
Right.
So I was trying to figure out something to satisfy those academic people out there. I'm a children's literature fan, so I don't know that much about scholarly blogs.
Sure.
But I was looking for a scholarly Jewish blog to make sure that we're providing, a broad range of suggestions here today. And there's one called Hagahot that's been around since 2005, and I have to admit that a lot of it is Greek to me. But it does include prize announcements and new book announcements and calls for papers and conference coverage, so I'm sure that for those academics out there, this would be of great interest. You took a look at that blog as well, Alex, right?
Right, I did take a look at it. I don't know if I'm happy or sad to say that it's also a bit over my head, but one of the things that I did note was in the sidebar of the blog, there is a complete list of Hebrew manuscripts online. And, being in the Jewish Bible business with JPS, some of the stuff on here is really impressive. They have links to the Aleppo Codex, which is the oldest known version of the Hebrew Bible at this point. It even predates the JPS version. We use one based on the Leningrad Codex, and this is a very impressive list.
Now, we've talked about a lot of different Jewish literary blogs, and I want to point out that there are even more Jewish literary websites out there that are not blogs. So this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We just wanted to talk about blogging because blogging is an interactive form of online expression, and we're hoping to get people to participate in that and be more interactive by posting comments on blogs. But I also wanted to mention just one of those sites that is not strictly a blog or a podcast. It's sort of a hybrid, and that's Tablet, which is the new name for Nextbook.
Yes.
The Tablet website is very comprehensive in covering Jewish literature among other Jewish arts and culture topics. And they have a podcast. Now, we've talked about quite a number of Jewish literary blogs. There are very few Jewish literary podcasts out there. Vox Tablet is the podcast created by Tablet, and it very frequently covers literature. It also has music and culture and history, but they very, very frequently will have author interviews and book-related coverage, and it's very professionally produced. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So I did want to mention that one as well.
I think that the one thing to really mention about the blogs we discussed is that really, like you said, it's just the tip of the iceberg about the Jewish book world and things that would be of interest to people within the Jewish book world. There's really a lot going on.
There really is. And that's what's so exciting about this whole social media thing, is that professionals and just people with a strong interest can share their news and their thoughts on the Jewish literary world so easily. And people who don't want to actually be producers of content can still take part in that conversation because of, the ability to post comments, to send email, to take a blog post and forward it to your colleagues. So it allows for the conversation to really become very dynamic. I want to point out that at the Book of Life podcast and at many other websites for blogs and podcasts, you'll see a little button at the bottom of each post that says share. And if you click on that, it will give you a lot of different ways to actually share that content. So if you think this is going to be interesting to your friends or colleagues, you can click on that button and then you can choose to email it, you can choose to post it to Facebook, you post it to Twitter, to put a social bookmark on it, and more. I don't even remember how many. There's probably like 20 different things on there that you can do to share that content.
Oh, at least.
Yeah, so any website you're looking at that has that little share button, it's a very convenient way to make sure that topics you care about are being looked at by more people.
Yeah.
Before we finish, I just want to point out that reading Jewish blogs is very helpful for those of us who are within this industry as librarians or publishers or booksellers or authors or whatever. But I think it's important also that we don't just talk amongst ourselves. So for me personally, I like to read other children's literature blogs that are secular, because I feel like sometimes there will be a conversation on multiculturalism or holidays, seasonal holidays, or representation of minorities in literature, or topics where I feel like I can contribute a Jewish point of view that maybe some of the other people who look at that blog wouldn't have thought about if I didn't bring it up. And I feel like that's really important, to make sure that other people who share with us that love of literature can also hear a Jewish point of view.
That's really true. There was a while where I was a blogger on the website interfaithfamily.com, and I felt like that was really a conversation of greater Jewish thought and non-Jewish thought alike. It's an interactive world. When you're blogging or you're sharing others' blogs, what you're doing is spreading out this world into this vast internet. Kind of the conversational side of blogging and interacting online is really what makes it the most interesting.
Alex Block, thank you so much.
Sure, yeah, it's my pleasure.
There are so many ways to connect with the Book of Life. Fan us at facebook.com/Book of Life Podcast. Follow us at twitter.com/Book of Life Pod. Email us at boooflifepodcast@gmail.com and listen to the latest episode by phone at 916-313-3820. And of course, find links to everything at bookoflifepodcast.com. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org, and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band at freilachmakers.com. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.